I'm hoping the Big Ten has to modify their system for us.
Probably like getting grade 10 sandpaper rubbed on your face every day.
I mean, we say it all the time, whether, there's two types of turds. You're a sinker or you're a floater, but you're still a turd, right? I
mean, we are about players and players playing the plays and not necessarily the plays.
Welcome to the Varsity Club podcast. My name is Derek Peterson. It's football week. It's game week. I have the entire Hail Varsity staff here with me. Greg Smith is to my right. Say hello.
Hello.
Jacob Padilla is to my left. Say hello.
Hi.
Aaron Sorensen is on a TV screen across from us. Say hello, Aaron.
Hi.
And Brandon Vogel is also on the same television screen, joining via Zoom. Brandon, say hello.
Hello.
How is everybody doing? Is everybody ready for the season, prepared for the season? Are you anxious about what you're going to see? Like, where are you guys at headspace-wise right now?
I feel like I haven't made enough gifts for game day, so that's my headspace right now, is just how many gifts can I make in the next 48 hours?
Yeah, I'm kind of disappointed that we have to put our Tecmo gifts that we made a few years back officially to bed now with all the players that we created them for. Moving on, J.D. Spielman was the last one, so I do not have any celebration gifts loaded on my computer anymore, so that's sad. But
do we not have any Brody Belt gifts?
Well,
was he
not here when we made those.
Okay.
No.
I was going to say, Jacob, if you're lucky, maybe I'll update the Tecmo Bowl ones maybe I'll update them. We'll see.
Do we have breaking news on the podcast right now? Are we going to get more Tecmo Bowl gifts? This would be breaking news.
We'll just see where my mental health state is in the next 48 hours, because gifts are oddly satisfying to make. So
Never actually made Tecmo or played Tecmo Bowl before.
Really?
Brandon, how much football have you watched this week in anticipation of the season beginning?
None, because these are not normal times, and we don't have the MAC on Tuesday and Wednesday. App State plays a midweek game. I don't know if there's Friday game. Yeah, there's not enough football is my problem.
So no 2019 rewatches for you this week?
No. I wanted to watch the Ohio State game, but it seems like the Big Ten has done a good job of scrubbing fairly recent Nebraska games from YouTube. So
I watched the Indiana game and I watched the Colorado game yesterday. So my headspace has been kind of excited, but I'm still trying, and this will probably come up once or twice on this podcast. The mystery of what this team is going to look like has me looking back to last year to see what I can glean from them.
You watched two games that featured both good and the bad.
Yeah, I ran the game.
Same time.
Yeah, in the same game even. We saw the same quarter. We saw that. Yeah.
So we are here today to talk. This is going to be like a season prediction podcast. This is going to be like a table setter for the 2020 season. Everything that I've done has been based off of 8 games. I know that they're going to play a 9th one, but that's kind of hanging in limbo because you don't know who it is. I don't know if we'll get to a bowl game or not, so I haven't really factored any of those in. We're going to do some over-unders later. I think I told you guys I based those off of 8 games.
I was thinking 9. I don't know if you actually specified that, and if you did, I missed it.
Okay, well.
Let's base it off 8.
Okay. Some of the numbers.
If these are 8-game numbers, I'm going to murder these.
Oh, yeah.
Over-unders.
Yeah, seriously.
Okay, fine. Do you want to do 9?
No, it's fine.
Okay.
Good for me.
Some of the over-unders that we used, Brandon, were some of the prop bets that you gave me back in September. Do you remember? Were those based off of 9 games or 8 games?
I don't recall. Well, it would have been 10 games at that point.
No, because this was after everything had been kind of set back up.
It would have been the most recent, whatever the current data we had. That sort of thing's very important to me.
Okay. Well, we're going to do opening arguments. We're going to do a little bit of a Ohio State specific preview. We're going to get to over-unders. And then towards the end, I'm going to give you guys a chance to either shout out or call out something from this offseason that you're either pleased with or very ready to move on from. Has to be Nebraska related, though. Let's start with opening arguments. Nebraska will be successful in 2020, or it will not be successful in 2020 because of blank. Each of you guys is going to have 2 minutes to talk. I'm going to get my clock ready to go. I'm going to get my timer ready to go. I'm going to time you. You have to stay within 2 minutes. Who would like to go first? Does anybody want to volunteer?
I'll go first, I guess.
Okay, Jacob. Opening arguments, Nebraska will be successful in 2020 or it will not be successful in 2020 because of blank. Your 2 minutes start now.
Offensively, I think it's going to come down to whether or not Nebraska can stay on schedule. And I think if they can do that, then that opens up a lot of different things, and it'll need a few different things to happen. Obviously, the offensive line is going to need to be as good as Matt Lubick and some of the coaches are talking it up to be. They're going to have to protect the quarterback. They're going to have to open up some running lanes for Dedrick Mills and those guys. And then if you're staying on schedule there, if you're getting good gains on early downs, then you can get more into the offense that Scott Frost wants to run with the up-tempo, with the spreading things out, with being able to take shots in certain places without having to force it on 3rd and long where you take it 2nd and short, you can take a shot here, maybe get a big play out of it. And it'll come down to Adrian Martinez playing efficiently. And that's going to be a big theme for this season is who is Adrian Martinez? How is he going to play? We obviously had the quarterback competition all off season, and Martinez is a guy for now. We'll see. Obviously, Frost opened up the door for that to continue being a discussion, and I'm sure it'll be fun seeing Twitter during games, depending on how Martinez plays. But that's what it's going to come down to is being able to stay on schedule, not having to make so many desperation plays, not being in bad situations where you're forced into doing things. They've got to be able to run their whole playbook. They got to be able to play like Frost wants to play. And I think that's going to come down to early down success rate and being ahead of schedule. And then defensively, I think it'll come down to getting off the field on 3rd downs. They're going to give up some yards. They're going to give up some big plays in here, but they cannot constantly be giving up, letting teams stay on the field. And it'll come down to the linebackers and coverage and kind of their schemes on 3rd down. That was a big problem last year. So those are the 2 main keys that I'm looking at.
Kept it under 2 minutes. Nice. You do not have to use your full 2-minute allotment, but you have to cut it off at 2 minutes. You're under 2 minutes. Good job. Do I have a volunteer for number 2?
I can go next because I can piggyback off of what Jacob was saying with Adrian Martinez because I'll keep this part. What?
Shocker. You want to talk about Adrian? Shocker.
I'm not, actually. I was using that as a launch pad into this. Nebraska will be successful in 2020 because of its offensive line. I think there's a ton of depth there. I agree when Matt Lubick says it's probably the best part of that offense. If that offensive line can be as strong as we think that they can be, obviously there's some question marks, but it opens up your run game. I think that's going to be incredibly important, especially when we really don't know what's going on at receiver. Those tight ends are going to be important too, but I'll just leave it at that. I think Nebraska will be successful or will not be successful based on the offensive line. I'm going to tend to believe it will be more successful because of it, but if that offensive line is not as advertised, then it'll quickly go the other direction.
I apologize for interrupting you.
It's fine. You thought it was going to be about the quarterbacks because everyone knows I'm a quarterback stan, but look at that. It's actually about the positions around the quarterbacks, which the coaches have said they all need to be better.
Pulled the old switcheroo. Greg, you want to go next?
Switcheroo.
I will go next.
All right. 2 minutes on the clock begins now.
Aaron stole my thunder to start off with about the offensive line, which is a really good one. Jacob mentioned it too. So I'll pivot and say that Nebraska will be good on offense if the wide receivers improve from week to week. No idea what we're going to see from them in, a couple of days from as a time of recording. Don't know who's going to be going out there outside of Wan'Dale Robinson. But if Matt Lubick is the upgrade that we're led to believe, then the position has talent based on the recruiting profiles and just who's already here. They should be able to improve week to week. And there's a trickle-down effect, I think, from those guys playing well. And it's not just about how much stats they put up. It completely changes what defenses can do or cannot do to Nebraska's offense if those guys are actual threats out there. If you come out in a game this weekend against Ohio State, and Ohio State feels like, hey, we can single cover and press cover everybody and only have a single safety high and then load up the box, that's going to make it really difficult, even if the offensive line is as good as a lot of people think it will, and I think it will be too. Dedrick Mills continues to improve. Like, it won't matter because you're just going to have too many guys in the box. So I think that getting the wide receiver play to a better point and continuing to grow throughout the season, I think is a huge deal. If they're bad on offense, I think it's the turnovers that will do them in. I think that you've seen them be a team that turns the ball over a lot over the last couple of years, notably Adrian Martinez, who's been very bad at that. On defense, I'm running out of time here. On defense, they will be good on defense if they're able to actually affect the quarterback. Sacks are the big number that everybody looks at. They were middle bottom-ish of the pack last year with 27 sacks. They have to be better, and they have to figure out, and that goes to what Jacob was saying about getting off the field on third down, and they'll be good on defense if they can actually improve that sack number.
Oh, we got it in just under the buzzer. Just under the buzzer.
That was incredible.
You know what that was? That was the little kid that starts drawing like happy birthday on a banner and draws just gigantic HAPP, and then he sees that he's running out of space, and you get like a super small B and then a really, really small I and then a bunch of letters like on top of each other. But you got it in under the buzzer. So
it got done.
Good job, I guess.
Thank you. 2
Brandon.
minutes goes by faster than you think.
Do what?
2 minutes goes by faster than you think.
It does. Brandon, you are up. Your time on the clock begins now.
All right, this gets pretty complicated, but I think for Nebraska to have success this year, it needs to have one of the 4 best offensive lines in the Big Ten and be a top 20 rushing outfit. I yield the rest of my time. I mean, if you want something on defense, like I can go with Greg. I think they're going to be a back to front defense. Like if that secondary is good enough to help out the pass rushers, to boost some guys. I mean, we look at this team and there's no kind of natural sack master that you can readily identify at this stage. So they're going to need excellent coverage to, I think, get them to that point. But yeah, that's kind of it. If they can run the ball, it
Run the ball.
Yeah, it cures a lot of potential ails with the receiving core and also with the defense. So I'll stop now.
So
I appreciate you saying sack master, because now I'm curious who's going to get us the Big Mac sacks this fall. Who's going to do it?
But
we need to know. The people want answers.
Are they doing that again?
They better.
I mean, it's
what else do we
tradition
have
at
to
this
live
point.
for?
So a question for Brandon, because you would probably remember this better than anyone else. Like, is there an example that you have of a team that the pass rush was really helped out by the secondary? Does it ever go that way? Because it feels like it doesn't.
I don't have any specific examples off the top of my head, but this was like a trendy debate in like football analytics circles 2 years ago, mostly with the NFL, of like, can you help out your coverage more with a pass rush, or can your coverage help out the pass rush more? And at least at the NFL, and it was close, but there was like a slight tendency towards pass coverage. And I mean, it's you think back to those 2009 and 10 Nebraska teams, you know, obviously you had Sue, who was just doing whatever he wanted. But you look at the sack total, and I mean, Sue contributed to this too, but like guys like Pierre Allen, Jared Crick, who's also a really good player, but they kind of got sacks across the board. And what I really think of, aside from Sue just ragdolling dudes nonstop, is how good those secondaries were. And it was a mix of JUCO guys and guys that they recruited and guys that they inherited at that early stage. And just with the way Nebraska's built, and I think the way it can be built in the future, it's always going to, I think, be better off in the secondary than it is up front, unless something drastically changes. But that's where they've been in their history.
And I think a big part of that too now is how much quicker a lot of offenses are getting the ball out of the quarterback's hands, where the quick passing game can really neutralize even a really good pass rush, where if you can get the ball out of your hands within 1 to 2 seconds, doesn't matter how good of a pass rusher you have, he's not getting there in time. So you got to have cornerbacks that you can kind of put in situations where they can play a little bit tighter. They don't have to give as much of a cushion. They don't have to play off as much because they're strong enough in coverage to hold up without that big of a cushion. So now the quarterback has to think as opposed to just getting the ball out of his hands so quickly. So I think that's a big part of it as well in terms of the coverage versus pass rush debate now.
Okay. Y'all want to hear mine? Or do we want to move on?
I mean,
You have one?
It's your show. We do.
Yeah, I
wanna
can have
hear it.
one.
Yeah,
but,
you can have
mean,
one. Like,
yeah,
it's-
I've got one. I just didn't know if you guys I have you guys here to listen to you talk, not for you to listen to me talk.
Well,
so
if you made us do the homework, then
Yeah, we
want to hear from
your-
you too.
Yeah, we want your opinion too.
Make sure you did it as well.
Clock starts now. Nebraska will be successful in 2020 if guys are who we think they are or thought they are. I wish I had the audio queued up. Was it Dennis Green? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I wish I had the audio queued up to have that right now, but I don't. If guys are who we thought they were or could be, Nebraska will be successful. And successful for them will be continuing to grow as a program. It won't be winning 6, 7, 8 games. It'll be finding some momentum. So, like, if Dedrick Mills is a bell cow, is a successful bell cow, if Adrian Martinez is what he was in 2018 and grows off of that instead of, the quarterback that he was in 2019, I think Nebraska has the potential to be a really, really efficient rushing offense. And I think Adrian Martinez's his biggest potential as a quarterback is in that kind of offense. It's in a run-first offense that will set him up for play action or set him up for more advantageous situations if they can run the ball successfully, which I think they can. If Brennan Hymas is one of the best tackles in the conference, like Greg Austin thinks he can be, they'll be good. If Cam Jurgens continues to take those next steps, if he's better at snapping the ball, they have the chance to have a cohesive offensive line. If Bryce Benhart is ready and they can keep Matt Farniok at right guard where they think he's better suited, and Benhart is ready to handle Big Ten defenses, then they should have a pretty good offensive line. And offensively, they should be a really good team running the ball, which I think will help what's going on with wide receiver, because they might just be in a state of flux all season long at wide receiver. Defensively, if Deontay Williams is he's the best guy that we have on the defense, if he's that kind of player, which they thought he could have been last year, and he stays healthy, they'll be fine.
Ooh.
Forgot about my timer for a second.
That was pretty close. You just barely snuck it in there, just like Greg.
I forgot about my timer for a second. It does go faster than you think it will.
It does. Yeah. It's fine.
Do we want to stick on this for a little bit and talk more about, does anybody want to define success for Nebraska in 2020, or do we want to move on to a little bit of an Ohio State preview? Ohio State preview it is. Pretty self-explanatory here. What are you guys going to watch for in week 1? What are you most curious about? Brandon, we'll start with you since you were the last non-me person to go.
Yeah, I think Jacob is about right where I'm at. Nebraska plummeted in terms of, you could look at it through a success rate, which I do often. Also from a predicted points added standpoint, Nebraska was top 25 in 2018, even through, the 0-6 start on first down predicted points added, which is, just kind of trying to measure how much value you're adding to those drives. Dropped into the 90s last year. And if that doesn't change, it's going to be pretty tough sledding for them. And I think I'm optimistic that it can change. I'd be surprised if it got worse with the offensive line they have and basically returning your entire team. But I think first downs are always critical. Like, this is basic football stuff, but you'll be able to tell a lot about how this game is going for Nebraska's offense just by what they're able to do there.
I don't have the numbers in front of me, and I don't think you will have the numbers in front of you either, but tendencies for Nebraska on first down, tendency for their offense just in general last year was to just run the ball significantly more than they threw it. Do you think that they're going to come out and do some weird stuff on first down to try to catch Ohio State off balance, or do you think they're just going to be a team that just tries to run it and stay on schedule and not have like 3rd and 12s?
Yeah, maybe early they do, just because it's a bizarre off season and it's kind of, throw everything you had those extra weeks to work on, well, not everything, but throw some new wrinkles in there and see if you can get a big play. I don't know over the seasons as a whole what those, run pass percentages were. I can tell you this: in 2018, when Nebraska had a lot of success on first down against Ohio State, it threw the ball a lot. In 2019, when it did not have that success, it ran the ball a lot. So if those hold throughout those seasons, and it seems like they would. They were much run heavier last year. Seems like they would have been a little more diverse in 2018. That's kind of where they were at.
I floated this to Greg on the drive up to our podcast studio. Does anybody think we might get some I formation football from Nebraska in week 1? They did some stuff with the fullback against Ohio State last year. It was the only time we saw it. Chenander talked about getting some 2-back looks from the offense in camp to help them prepare for Wisconsin, so they've got that in there. Do we see it?
Maybe they line up in that, show them, because Ohio State is who they used it against last year, and then flex one of the backs out and just go into a quick passing game instead. Just kind of mess with their heads, like, oh, hey, I remember this last year. Hey, get ready to watch the run coming in.
Do you put Dedrick Mills at fullback and Luke McCaffrey behind him? Will we see a weird package for Luke McCaffrey in week 1?
Dedrick Mills was the fullback in those 4 I formation plays they ran.
Yeah.
And I think they put
Wandale
Robinson behind him.
Yep.
Yeah.
But could they? What I said to Derek on the drive is I could see them doing it and having Mills be the fullback, with then Ronald Tompkins being the guy dotting the I, and then you have Wandale in the slots, and then you have kind of maximum flexibility in that. Which would be interesting. I mean, people would go nuts for it. Whether or not it works is a whole different thing. But we'll see.
No one took the Luke McCaffrey bait. Do we see a weird package from him?
I do. I don't know if you'll see it against Ohio State, although the ultimate flex, and I can't take credit for this, Brandon sort of said this as a joke, but the ultimate flex would be for them to roll Luke out as quarterback to start the game. Just because it would completely throw a wrench in everyone's plans. But unfortunately, then you completely undermine everything else. But I would be shocked if we don't see Luke. I mean, why not get weird? This entire season is weird. Why not? I maybe we'll see it against Ohio State, but you're gonna see Luke McCaffrey do something that isn't act as a quarterback.
The why not
this season?
Sorry, the why not was a question in our mailbag this week that I remember specifically Jacob's answer. The why not is, well, if Luke McCaffrey gets hurt doing something other than quarterback, then you turn to Logan Smothers as a true freshman as your backup. Jacob, do you still feel that way?
Yeah.
And you wrote it on yesterday, so.
Yeah, and I kind of said the same thing on the radio as well. I don't think the reward. I could be wrong. We haven't seen exactly what they've been cooking up and how McCaffrey's been playing, but I just think the reward isn't greater than the risk of putting him out there in these kind of weird situations where I said if he's playing full time at quarterback and he's not going through the wide receiver reps and really hammering home the playbook out there and working on his route running, all that kind of stuff, how much more is he going to help you in kind of that role or a gadget role than the other guys that are working there full time? And if the answer is a lot, then Nebraska's probably in trouble. And then so you take that part about if he's going to help you more as a quarterback, then why didn't he win the job? So I just don't know. I've been kind of never really quite understood how what exactly. Nobody's really defined what they think that's going to be. How do you actually get him involved? Because typically, good offenses don't use 2 quarterbacks very much, and when they do, I don't necessarily think that it helps them. So I'm not sure. Maybe we'll see a few trick plays similar to what we saw last year. They'll bring him in to run a couple plays here or there and some weird stuff, and those were effective a little bit last year when they used them. But beyond that, I don't know what that would look like to get him more involved. And then, like you said, the injury part of it as well. You want to have that guy healthy, and we've seen how much Martinez has gotten banged up throughout his career already.
I have 2 numbers written down in my notes, one of them focusing on the offense, one of them focusing on the defense. A year ago, Nebraska got stuffed on 20.2% of its runs. So 1 out of every 5 was stopped at or behind the line of scrimmage. Ohio State's defense was 3rd in stuff rate last year. will this game be decided on the ground in the trenches? I mean, you can pretty much make the case that every single football game ever is decided at the line of scrimmage. But Nebraska was a team, in terms of like power running, I have it written down, they were 26th nationally in power success rate. So on third or fourth down with 2 yards or fewer to go, they picked it up 78% of the time. It's pretty good.
That's surprising.
They weren't a team that struggled in short yardage situations, at least on third and fourth down, but they were a team, maybe you could categorize them, at least in the run department, as feast or famine.
Yeah.
Do we think, and I wrote about this week, it might be strength on strength with that Ohio State defensive line, because they lost Chase Young, but they're going to be fine on the defensive line probably. Do we think that it's going to be, if Nebraska can run the ball, it has a chance? If Nebraska can't run the ball, it stands no chance. Is it that cut and dry?
Might be close. I mean, Ohio State's fine talent-wise on the defensive line, but they still are replacing basically 3 of 4 starters. And those dudes are super talented, but it's a first game scenario. Maybe some new wrinkles from either run game coordinator or offensive coordinator, probably both, just in terms of how you're asking those guys to move. Nebraska's offensive line should be better. So I think it's just, I don't know if it's that cut and dried, but if you're asking me what would I prefer if I were in Scott Frost's position, I'd much prefer that than really having to lean on a wide receiver core that at this point seems like almost a total mystery outside of Wan'Dale Robinson.
Yeah, and this was actually ties into what I was actually going to say for the answer of what I'm watching for in week 1 is that, like, what kind of physicality does Nebraska come out with right out of the gates? Physicality and confidence, because the offensive line, for as much as they've been talked about on this podcast and throughout the offseason, they should be a pretty confident group, right? Like, they should say, okay, we're coming into this game and we know that these guys have talent and these are guys that are pegged to be future stars, but they're pegged to be future stars. We're here now and they have to grow and learn. Like, we want to see if we can push them around. Like, maybe they can't, and maybe that's what ends up being the answer. But I think it's tied to that. I think that Nebraska absolutely is going to have to be able to run the ball successfully. But I'm looking for, if Nebraska comes out with confidence, that they can actually push those guys around and just see what happens. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't work. But I think you have to attack that confidently.
Jacob, what are you watching for in week 1?
I'm going to be watching Adrian Martinez. Obviously, we saw what he was as a freshman. We saw what he was as a sophomore. I think one of the biggest storylines that's going into this year, now that he's won the starting job heading into week 1, is who is Adrian Martinez really? Is he a guy that can elevate your team and lead you to winning season and do all the things that we thought he could while we were watching him as a freshman? And obviously it's a little bit more worried now about the wide receiver situation. You thought kind of a big part of a potential bounce back was having a much better situation around him. Still have the offensive line, should be healthy going into week 1. We don't know exactly who he's going to be throwing to, so that is more of a question mark now.
Austin Allen.
Yeah, those tight ends should be healthy, so he'll have some options there to throw to. So I think just going to be watched, because obviously, depending on how he plays, the chatter, I think Scott Frost, with his 2 quarterback thing, has only increased the kind of chatter we're going to hear on game days. On each and every throw, people are going to be calling for McCaffrey every single time he throws an incomplete pass. So that'll kind of be interesting to see just what that whole thing is like, kind of how the fans view this season and the way he's playing, and everything that goes along with that. So offensively there, and then defensively, it's going to be the linebackers, and how much can those inside linebackers make progress, because that was a weak point last year, and 2 of the 3 guys are back from that group. We're expecting some improvement from them. Then maybe some of the young guys can get in there and offer a different kind of skill set to hopefully strengthen that position as a whole. But they've got to be in their run fits. They got to be in the right spots. They can't get torched in coverage, like I was mentioned earlier, especially on third down. So that can't happen. And then Deontay Williams. I just want to see him play football. Everything we've heard about him, what we saw in that limited role his first year in Nebraska, I just want to see what he's got and what he can bring to this defense.
I have gap integrity, edge setting, and contain in a box made of stars. So Justin Fields averaged 3.5 yards per carry last year, but he had 22 explosive runs. This was the 8th most in the conference. Like, Fields is going to hurt them through the air. He's going to do his thing. I think I don't know if he is eligible for the Heisman, because it'll be awarded before they finish the season. If he's eligible for the Heisman, he might be the only person in America that could take it away from Trevor Lawrence. If he's not, obviously it doesn't matter. But, like, he's going to do his thing in the passing game. Where they can't let him kill them is in the run department. So they have to be better at setting the edge. They have to be more assignment sound in their gaps, which was a problem at the linebacker level last year. They have to do a better job of containing him. I'll be looking at that in week 1. Aaron, what about you?
Well, I mean, aside from everything, a lot of you've already taken the stuff that I had, but I guess for myself, I'll add this layer to it. I'm going to actually just read Frost's quote from earlier. I had it pulled up, so let me go grab it really quick. He talked about, so he said this during his last availability for the week, that whatever happens, I want to see a bunch of guys who basically don't like getting hit in the mouth, but aren't afraid of the next play and go out and try to continue to make great plays. The thing I brought up a number of times, and we've all talked about, is that this team just for some reason doesn't know how to win. And I go back to that Colorado matchup last year. I think Nebraska was the better team in that matchup, and they blew a 17-0 lead and ultimately lost. And even if you go back and look at like ESPN's win projection throughout it, even when they were down, ESPN wasn't quite like ready to say that they were not going to win. That's where that game should not have gone that way. So why does this team get so defeated? And this isn't specific to Frost and what he has created. This has been the case for a while. So I guess I'll be looking at the same thing Frost is for guys who, when they get punched in the mouth, don't just, retreat. I don't really know how to quantify that by anything outside of just show up and do your job. But we hear a lot about culture. We hear a lot about him getting the culture that he wants. Scout's agreeing with me if you hear her in the background. But yeah, at some point that has to translate into winning. It's pretty simple for me.
I thought that quote was really good. And you could quantify it by looking at maybe their third down numbers on defense. Maybe you could look at red zone conversion percentage, which are two areas that need to improve.
Could you also look at it, and it's not going to necessarily be this game, but like in those games in which they get up 17-0, that they can find a way to put teams away?
You don't think they're going to be up 17-0 in this game?
Spoiler alert, no.
Which team are you talking about?
I wasn't going to go there, but yeah.
All right. Since we have limited time with Aaron today, let's move on to the over/under section, which will be more of like the season previews. So we're going to start with Adrian Martinez. Now, a couple of these numbers, like I said in the beginning, they were set by Vegas. So Adrian Martinez touchdowns were set at 13.5. He had 17 as a freshman. He had 10 as a sophomore. Aaron, over or under 13.5 touchdowns?
Oh, this is the one where I'm gonna take the under, but only because
now you look like you're second guessing, you're questioning everything.
Don't let us guilt you out of it. Say what you were gonna say.
So it has nothing to do with Adrian. It has everything to do with the receivers and being fairly uncertain of what he's going to have. Okay. With Wandale, that gives me some faith in maybe taking the over. And I just don't know what to expect from the tight ends. I don't know what to expect from the receivers, which is where I'm hesitant. All of you made me feel really bad, so now I'm going to take the over out of sheer
mark that down
pressure.
As an under. No, she's taking the under.
You 100% when we reacted, the look on your face was like you were questioning every decision you've ever made in your entire life.
I'm very like I said, I'm just really hesitant because of the receivers. I just don't know what they have. I don't. And we also have less games. So I don't know. I'll stick with it. It's under even if he hits 13. So
sure. Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, all of that is fair and logical. Jacob, what about you?
I am going to take the over. You mentioned 17 in 11 games as a freshman, 10 in 10 games last year. So I think he doesn't have to be a superstar to hit that over. He just has to kind of settle in at least somewhere in between, because even that freshman rate, you prorate that out to, I guess I was thinking 9 games, but he would have been right on that. He would have been just barely made the over based on the same rate as his freshman year. And even that wasn't a high touchdown rate year. Like 17 touchdowns compared to a lot of quarterbacks out there. That wasn't a crazy number or anything. So I think he can, as long as he makes some improvement, he doesn't even have to suddenly become a superstar to hit that over. And 13.5, if he can't hit that, then it's going to be a long year, I think. And
it's 1.7 a game.
Yeah.
If you were about to look that up.
Okay. Yeah.
It's 1.7 a game.
Yeah. And so I guess
you're fair. You're fair on this. You're actually talking to me into it. Like, you guys can still roast me for taking the under, but like, even just thinking about this weekend, he kind of has to hit the over to get anywhere near the score prediction, I thought. So my things aren't matching up in my head at this point.
Yeah, that's the tough part about these over-unders. You got to kind of put them in comparison to each other. And I think the wideout situation, you have a good point there. That is worrisome. You thought a lot of the end zone improvement, the red zone improvement, was a guy like Omar Manning being there that you could throw the ball up to, that could go beat one-on-one coverage. You have a guy maybe like Xavier Betts at some point, another bigger guy, athletic, that can go up and get the ball. We don't know exactly how big of a part of this team early on, especially, and just in general, those guys are going to be right now, just based on what we heard in the preseason. So that definitely is worrisome, but I'm going to stick with the over, and because if they can, I guess maybe if they can run it well enough to where they get a lot of short yardage rushing touchdowns in the red zone. We didn't really talk about rushing touchdowns for him or Dedrick Mills or anything like that. Kind of, that's the other part of this. So maybe if he's running the ball into the end zone instead of passing it, you can still kind of get to where you need to be as long as the total touchdowns is there. But I'm going to stick with the over.
So I'm going to take the over too. Like I said, he had 17 in 2018. 9 quarterbacks in the Big Ten have had 13 or more every year since 2015. So now I know that was 12-game, 13, 14-game season for some of them, but 9 guys have done it, and I think Adrian can be like one of the 9 best quarterbacks in the Big Ten Conference. I know that's not an oversimplification of it, but they basically scored 3.3 touchdowns a game last year. If we expect that to go up, like, Adrian would have to be the one producing them, right? And I expect the offensive numbers to go up. I expect the points to go up.
Dedrick Mills with double-digit touchdowns last year. It's not like he's going to suddenly be a 25-touchdown guy.
Right. 13.5 is 1.7 over, I think I did an 8-game season. No, I'm questioning. Adrian can get that. Yeah, I'm taking the over.
Yep.
Greg?
I've gone back and forth as we've kind of gone through here. And I'm a little like shell-shocked that everybody is convincingly saying the over, and it almost just makes me want to go the
I wasn't convinced.
Well,
I still don't know what I'm taking.
Yeah, to say you probably changed your mind again since.
I've changed my score prediction like 4 times for this game. I don't know what I think anymore.
I just feel like the things that we come to expect seem to never happen, but I'm going to go with the over. And I think what kind of pushed me in this direction is it is 1.7 a game. I agree with Derek that the offense should be better, and he has to produce to be able to get it there. So I'm going to go reluctantly. I am going to go over.
The funny thing is we've saved Brandon for the end in this, and like it would be perfect if he came in and said under. Brandon?
Allow me to oblige you. I think it's under pretty easy, actually. Maybe not.
Wow.
Already walking it back.
Perfect.
It may not be easy. With a 9-game schedule, I put Adrian at 13, so just under. But with an 8-game schedule, I feel even better about that. Here's the thing. There's no his career average so far is 1.25 per game against conference opponents. There are only conference opponents. There are no real, outside of maybe Illinois, and we'll see, Illinois went bowling last year, Nebraska didn't. There are no real stat padding games on this schedule. So I think you got to look hard at the conference only numbers when trying to figure these out. So for that reason, I am under.
Can I add one comment before we move on?
I feel better.
You say that there are no real stat padding games on the schedule. That is true if you're talking about them being up, like 50-14 at halftime. It is not true, however, if you think that against like Minnesota, Ohio State, Penn State, that they're going to be trailing early and big, so they're going to have to throw the ball. Like, I'm thinking about the Penn State game on the road in 2017 where Tanner Lee just went bonkers in the second half, but it didn't actually matter because they lost and they were going to lose. Like, garbage time touchdowns count.
They do for these purposes.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable in my position on this.
Okay. All right. The next over-under is Adrian Martinez yards. Vegas set this at 1,835.5. Greg.
I'm going to go under on this one. And really because I was leaning under on the touchdowns, I wanted to split it up. But also because I think that Adrian's rushing totals could be a little bit higher, and therefore he may not have to throw it as much. He might not get as much yardage. I'm going to go under.
Jacob.
I went over, and again, when I sat down and decided these, I was going off 9 games. Factoring that number into 8 games, that's 230 yards a game, basically, which he went just over in his freshman year. And the logic I followed with the touchdowns is I think he's going to revert more to freshman year numbers. And if I'm following that same path, I'll go with over on that as well. And the point Derek raises as well is a good one. No matter how they go, if they're doing well or if they're not doing well, then he's probably going to be passing more than they want anyway. So just kind of playing the odds there, I'm going to take the over. I don't think he's going to clear it by a ton, but 230 yards a game. Like I said, he was at 237.9 as a freshman. So I think he can get into that same ballpark.
Aaron, over or under?
I guess if I'm going to take the under on the first one, I'll just take the under here too. I mean, I had taken the under. I feel like both of these, both passing touchdown and passing yards, he could be pretty much in the neighborhood of both of these. And that's the challenge, is it doesn't really matter if it's 1 yard. If it's 1 yard higher or lower, for this purpose, I'll take the under. I think sometimes when you do that, people think like you're taking it under by like 500 yards. It could literally be the under by 5.
Sure.
So I'll stick with that.
I took the over. He was over that number last year. He was over it in his freshman year. And last year he only played 10 games. So now all of this is assuming that he's not going to wind up being quarterback 2 by like the 4th game of the season. But I took the over. I think he can get there. Brandon, what about you?
At 9 games, I'm over. At 8 games, I'm under. Got him at 1,900. That's based on his career 215.5 yards per game in Big Ten play. So he's right there. This was a good number from Vegas. So depending on the number of games, that's what that would be. I guess when you throw in the possibility for any game at any moment to perhaps not go off, I guess that pushes me to the under off of my original over selection.
So with that in mind, I feel like we should just go with the understanding that they're going to play the full season, and then we can kind of prorate our expectations to the number of games they end up playing. Sure. So if they do end up only playing 6 or 7, we'll just divide by the per game average for what we thought it would be and see if they clear it that way.
Yeah, we're just operating right now under the very unsafe assumption that they're going to get through a full 8-game schedule.
Yeah, so maybe per game would have been the better number to go with as opposed to totals, but I think that total will give you the per game based off of our parameters.
Total is what Vegas gave us. So have I gotten through everybody on yardage?
Yes.
Okay, now we move to Wanda Robinson. Receiving yardage, not all-purpose yardage. Receiving yardage for everybody. It's set at 515.5 yards. That was set by Vegas as well. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. I'm going to say over. Based on 8 games, that is 64 yards per game. Last year, he was at 43 receiving yards per game. In 10 games, I think he'll be much better in this season. I wish I had pulled this particular number. I feel like there was not as many explosive plays from Wan'Dale as we could end up seeing this year, and I think that's actually a big key in general to the offense. And I think that number goes up and helps him get to that. I think over on this.
He was only 11.3 yards per catch last year, so that's how you get 40 receptions and don't even clear 500 yards.
Yeah, I mean, he played the bulk of his season as a running back.
And you stopped
and
that.
he missed 2 games, and he still had 453 yards. I'm taking the over because if you look at J.D. Spielman last year in what we have all considered a bad year in terms of passing the ball, Spielman averaged 74.8 a game over an 8-game schedule. That's 598. So I think Wan'Dale can slide seamlessly into that first option role that Spielman played. I know he's going to be in the slot, but I think Wan'Dale should be rightfully so the first option. I think he's going to get a significant bump from not having to run the ball up the middle of or up the gut for 3 yards. 10 times a game.
And I actually looked at J.D. Spielman's sophomore year, kind of for a comparison, where Spielman was kind of that 1B to Stanley Morgan's 1A, and
82
at this
yards
point,
a game.
Yeah, we don't know if they're going to have another kind of
like who
main option that will really draw coverage away. But I think you saw 66 receptions for 818 yards in 10 games for J.D. Spielman, playing alongside Stanley Morgan. And obviously, I don't think Nebraska wants to throw it quite as much as they did that year, but it shows you that there's room in this offense for that slot receiver guy to put up those kind of numbers. So at 515, I'll definitely take the over. I think that's pretty easy. I think in the mailbag, I threw out 60 catches for 780 yards and 6 touchdowns, and that was off the 9-game season. So you kind of still adjust that to an 8-game season, still easily over safely. And also the not running the ball as much, I think will help that because you're going to get him his touches. And now instead of handing them off, you're going to get him the ball more often. And I think he's good enough to take advantage of those extra touches, however they get it to him.
Okay. Aaron, where are you at?
I'll take the over. That's for the same reasons. I'll just take the over.
Were you going to say under and you changed your mind at the last second?
No, he's one where I feel pretty confident that when given the chance, he's going to take all the yards. And considering, to my point about Adrian and being unsure of what is going to happen there because of the receivers, the one reliable guy we do know he has is Wan'Dale. And I think as long as Wan'Dale can stay open and isn't completely targeted by opposing defenses, which we know he will be, but he's good enough to evade that, I'll take the over.
Okay. What about you, Brandon?
Under, reluctantly. I think it's pretty close. He was at 48 yards a game in Big Ten play last year, which was better than his non-conference number because he was still kind of working his way into the offense, and they were figuring out how best to use him. I think what Aaron mentioned, like, I'm scared of this wide receiver group right now, and with him being like the one known entity, I want to see how much attention he gets first. I want to see if there are other guys who step up around him, and that could be tight ends easily as well, to relieve some of that. So, it's not just find Wan'Dale on every down and know that you have to deal with him. And Nebraska will still be creative and find ways to get him touches. But I'm just kind of shading a little bit that way. I think it'll be really close, but I'll take the under.
You're approaching this offensive season with some caution, it seems.
Don't worry, it all snaps together eventually. You gotta understand. You gotta think about how if I take under here, how it fits into the whole picture. So stay tuned.
Yeah, tease.
You're playing chess while we're playing checkers, is what you're telling me.
No, that's not it. I'm just saying.
Okay. All right. Okay.
I really was like, well, if I say this, then what does it mean for that? Yeah.
All right. Number 4 is tight ends and wide receivers. We're factoring both of them in here with 400 yards. So number of guys that hit the 400-yard receiving mark. Set it at 2.5. Brandon, it seems like you would maybe be taking the under on that one. We'll let you go first.
When I first read this, I only saw the tight ends part.
Same.
And I was like, is Derek high?
I thought the same thing.
I was so
I thought the
confused.
same
I'm like,
thing.
that's the easiest one.
I was like, thanks,
there's going to
man.
be 0 tight ends with 400 yards. Nebraska hasn't had one since at least 2009. Yeah. Kyler Reed got to 395 in 2010, and that's the closest they've come over the past decade. But yeah, I think I'll stick with the. I'm going to stick with the under. They'll get 2. And I think if this offense works the way they want it to, and the way it probably has to for now, given some of those question marks I have at pass catcher, they'll be under that. So you might get pretty close, but I'll go under 2.5.
Okay. Aaron?
I'm taking the under as well, but I agree. The first time I was reading through these questions, I only saw tight ends, and I was like, man, we're very confident in the tight end group this year.
I started it with Husker receivers / tight ends. Yeah. Husker receivers, did you guys just skip over that part?
I just went back and looked, and I don't remember that at all. I don't know how, but
we edited that in. We edited that in.
I just figured like Jacob just like really made a play for the tight ends and was like, just let's see how many tight ends can get 400 yards this season.
I'm so confused.
I'm gonna take the under 2 because as confident as I am in Scott Frost's basketball team at tight end, between them and the receivers, no.
Welcome to 2020, where the weirdness continues and Nebraska runs exclusively I formation and 3 tight end sets. Jacob, over under.
I mean, why not?
Yeah, This is a really good number. I think that's probably right where it needs to be to make you really think hard about this. A month or 2 back, I probably would have taken the over. Now I'm less certain because it seems like that picture at wide receiver is less certain. And I felt like if guys were who we thought they were, they had a chance to get that 3+ guys into that range. You got, obviously, Wan'Dale Robinson, Omar Manning, maybe a guy like Alante Brown emerges, something like that, and then maybe one of those tight ends. Now, it just seems like there's so much uncertainty. I have no idea who are going to be the guys that catch the most passes this year beyond Robinson. He's going to clear it, I think, pretty easily, as we've established. But beyond him, I don't know who the 2nd, 3rd, 4th receivers are going to be. And there's a chance it's just spread out, and you can still have a good season with the uncertainty there if you have guys at least produce. It doesn't necessarily have to be 1 or 2 guys doing it. But right now, I don't like. So you could have Omar Manning have a good stretch where he plays well and is a big part of it. Eventually, you have Alante Brown coming on down the season, whatever, and still not get to that point. You could have Cade Warner be reliable, do everything he needs to, and come in under that mark as well. So I'll take the under on 2.5. I think we'll get 1. I think we've got a chance to get 2. At this point, I just have a hard time seeing who that 3rd guy would be.
Yeah, I took the under 2. Lubick, he had three guys when he was the offensive coordinator for a year at Oregon and then 2 years at Washington. He had 3 guys in 2 of those 3 seasons, in 16 and then in 18. His first year at Washington, he only had 1 guy. I kind of think, I agree with you, Jacob, that I kind of think receiver is going to be a little bit of a revolving door this season, because realistically you have to factor in like they're going to have some dudes miss out on games because of testing. Maybe they're going to have guys that get injured. That stuff is going to happen, and I just think like maybe like Xavier Betts comes on at the end of the season, and like you get to game 5 or something, and it's like, all right, we got to put this dude on the field, and maybe he starts taking snaps away from somebody else that was playing earlier in the year. Like I think you're right on when you say that there's going to be a lot of guys that produce as opposed to 2 or 3 guys that produce a ton. Greg?
Under. This one I felt pretty confident about once I figured out the actual question and noticed receivers in there. I just don't. A good prop bet here really would be like who's going to be the 2nd receiver or who's going to be the 3rd like leading receiver, because man, it would just be all over the board. I'm going to go under. I think that's a safe bet here.
Aaron's dog has hijacked the podcast. He's on the Zoom call.
This is what Scout actually does.
This is
It
incredible.
does not matter. She gets tired of not being included after a period of time. And she only does it when I'm on video calls. Only time.
I know no one
Right.
can see this because this is a podcast and you can only hear it, but Erin's dog is literally on top of her licking her face.
That's great.
It's wonderful.
She has opinions and she wants them heard.
Over under.
All right, we got to everybody with
She is doing my job.
this section, didn't we? Brandon, you started us out, didn't you?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we got
we
it.
got
Yeah,
everybody.
okay,
It's
all
the
right.
first one we all agreed.
Number 5 is interceptions thrown. This suggestion comes to us via Brandon Vogel, who set the number at 9. Adrian had 9 in 2019 and then 8 in 2018. Who wants to start us out? Greg, how about you start us out? Over, under.
I will go under. Boy, but I'm reluctant. I've been reluctant a lot today. I will go under. I actually think that because I started off talking about the keys of limiting turnovers, I think that they actually would do a better job with that. I will keep it brief. I think under on this one.
Okay. Brandon?
I'm under on this one, based almost solely on how much I think Nebraska runs the football. I think that'll be key. You do hope to see some kind of improved decision making from Adrian or Luke if Luke happens to get some serious snaps at quarterback just with at least 1 year, even though it was a redshirt year under his belt. So I'll go under.
Jacob?
Yeah, and it's worth noting that this is total team interceptions, correct?
Yeah, not just Adrian.
Yeah, so that's factoring in anybody else who might be getting snaps there, so it doesn't really matter who it is.
Gadget play. Wandale throwing a pass.
But so they were at 9 last year, and they were at 11 2 years ago, I believe. And that was in 12 games both years, obviously. So I think they can just show a tiny little bit of improvement and hit that under. That's all it takes. In an 8-game season, that's 1 interception a game, and that's it. And I think they can get to that point at least where they hit the under in an 8-game season. If we're looking at 9, 10, 11 games, whatever, that gets a little bit tougher. But with what we've got set now, I'm taking the under.
Erin?
I'll take the under. Scout's in agreement.
I'll mark Scout down.
Can I say push?
No.
I think that'll be at 9. I think 9's a really good number. 1 a game, probably about where it will be, should be.
Let the record show that Derek was the first one to push.
Okay. The next one is interceptions gained by the defense. I've set this number at 11, and in my notes I have over, and in my notes next to over I have Deontay with an exclamation mark. So I'm saying over. I think Deontay's going to be really good. I think in the mailbag I said that he was going to lead the team with 4. I think they're going to have a number of guys that turn pass deflections into interceptions. I think DiCaprio Boodle is finally going to turn deflections into interceptions because it really is remarkable that he doesn't have a single one so far. With all of the now, I guess that teams are going to have to throw it at him for him to be able to intercept it, but I think he can turn a couple. I've got over 11, which they need. They need. Like I've talked about it before. Like the Baylor defense is so interesting to me in that Matt Rule said 30 turnovers and 40 sacks, and you'll be really good. And they hit those marks, and they were 11-3. And like I think like this defense will probably try to play a similar way, and that it's not necessarily about the yardage; it's about the energy, momentum, swinging plays. I think that they've been building towards being a better takeaway unit over. I've got them at the over. Brandon, what about you?
Yeah, I'll go with the over on that very reluctantly, but to support the overall narrative arc of all of my picks, I need to be at over on this for the defensive backs. I mean, hey, you'll take D-line and linebacker interceptions too, but I'm counting on that secondary to be pretty good.
D-line interception should count double.
I should just get an automatic touchdown if they get like Darian Daniels should have gotten a touchdown for what he did against Purdue last year. That should have been points on the board.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether he fell short of the goal line or not, it should have been points on the board. Greg?
I'm going to go with the over as well. I think the secondary. I think the secondary will be good. I do think I was kind of along Derek's line of thinking about Boodle as well. That like if he just converts a couple of those, that starts to boost things. I agree that Deontay will be very good as well. I am curious now that Derek said it, if teams throw at Boodle as much, like if they kind of start to think, okay, well maybe he's going to start to catch those, or he's going to break them up, and so maybe we shouldn't, and we should test someone else.
Well, they did last year. They didn't throw at him and decided to throw at Lamar Jackson instead. And Lamar had a really good year, but they were just it was the choice that offenses made not to throw at Boodle.
Which is, that whole thing was always just interesting. But I'm going to still go. I'm going to go with the over, and I think I'm going to go out on a limb and say that a linebacker does get an interception.
Who else still needs to answer this?
Aaron.
I do.
Okay, go for it.
I'll take the over as well. I think, one of the strong suits of this defense is it's the defensive backs. I think this is going to be a big year for them. And while there's some uncertainty on the line, just as far as, they did just take their starting three and put them in the NFL, but we know there's enough talent there. I think they'll get pressure up front. I think teams will end up putting the ball in the air, and I think that those defensive backs are going to be ready, especially as long as people can stay healthy. So I'll take the over.
Jacob?
All right. I will be the lone dissenting voice here. They were at 0.92 interceptions per game each of the last 2 years. It's interesting that it stayed steady. And you put that in 8 games, that's just over 7 interceptions in the season. I think they can improve on what they were last year and still not get to 11 in 8 games. So I think we could see 9-10 interception season and still feel like they've shown some improvement on that end while not hitting that mark of 11. So I'm taking the under.
Okay.
I really wish people could see Scout.
Oh, jeez.
Scout's just chilling, looking at the screen. Next category is fumble recovery percentage. This was another Brandon suggestion. He put it at 50%. Brandon, what say you?
Yeah, this was a dumb one. Don't spend very much time on it at all. This is simply a measure of, do you think Nebraska will be lucky or unlucky this year? Because theoretically, you should recover 50%. They were at 58.8 last year, 40.9 this year. Again, in service of the story, I will go over.
I will go under because Nebraska is not lucky and they can't have nice things. Evidenced by the injuries that they face as they prepare for week 1. Who else would like to go?
I'll go under as well for the exact same reason as Derek.
Aaron.
I was going to just say I'll take the over. I'll let them have a little bit of luck in 2020.
All right, coming into I did not actually look into this one at all. Coming in, I was planning to go the same way that Brandon went because that's typically a smart way to go. So I will take the over, and I do feel like they've got some guys that have a knack for getting to the football. You add Deontay Williams into that mix. Cam Taylor-Britt obviously is one of those guys, and I think one or two of those linebackers, JoJo Doman, I think could be that type of guy. So I think they've got some guys that can. Obviously, it's luck, but you also have to have guys that are effective at putting themselves in those situations where they're in position to recover fumbles. And I think Nebraska's got some of those guys.
Next one. We've only got 2 left. And this is the big one. This really is the big one with the defense. Yards per carry, so yards per run allowed. Set the number at 4.8. Greg, where you at?
They were at 5.5.
4.82 last year.
Where were the 4.82?
I think.
Where did I get 5.5 from?
I think SIP says 5.5 because he's basing it just off of Big Ten play.
Okay, which actually might not be a bad way to go on this one, just because they're only playing conference games. I'm going to go over. I'm not convinced that they stop the run all that much better this year, especially at the beginning of the season. I think that they could be better at the end than they are at the beginning, and they'll be scrambling to get back down to this number. So I will go over on the 4.8.
They've been over that number each of the last 3 years. In 2017, they were at 5.57.
At some point, it's going to have to turn, but I don't think yet. I think I'm going to go over on this one.
Brandon, where you at?
Over. Yeah. Last 2 years combined in Big Ten play, 5.6 yards per carry allowed. It's just improving by almost a full yard is a big ask when you look at the defensive linemen lost. So as Greg was kind of alluding to, this is one that needs to get fixed soon-ish, but I don't think this is a year for that.
Yeah, I think they're also going to get tested on the ground too, because people are going to want to try out. I mean, when you have to replace all three of your starters on the defensive line, like that's where teams are going to attack you. Aaron, where are you at?
I'm going to take the over as well. But like I said in the last answer, I do think that the defensive line will. I think that they'll bring some pressure. Like, I think that we know that there's a lot of talent there. I just still think that there's going to be some questions that have to be answered, and there's going to be young mistakes that just happens. So I'll take the over, but I think they're closer to fixing it maybe with this group than not. But yeah, I'll still take the over.
Jacob?
Yeah, this is a tough spot, especially I think with the teams they start out against early in the season compared to maybe some of the ones, obviously, there are some run-heavy teams later on as well, but you come out against Ohio State and Penn State even with their injuries and Wisconsin early on. Those are some of the best rushing teams you're going to play against, and you got to do that before you can really kind of sort things out and let guys ease into the season or whatever. So losing out on that non-conference and having those teams early on in the schedule, I think they can show improvement from start to finish and still not hit that mark for the overall season numbers. So I'll take the over as well, but I think it will get better in the second half of the season, both because of the schedule easing up a little bit and also because I think they're going to improve with more experience.
I'm going to take the under. Only 2 teams in the Big Ten last year averaged more than 4.8 yards per carry as an offense.
Yeah.
And Maryland's defense last year gave up 4.26 yards per carry. Maryland.
Yes, I was looking at that too, but then I remember that's full season numbers and not just Big Ten numbers. So
sure, I mean, sure, but you also, I think when you want to throw out non-conference, you're also losing a little bit of the context of, like, they were healthiest in those games. So you're starting your season. Still, I mean, like, I get what you're saying, and that they're only going to be facing Big Ten and not, South Dakota State. But I'll take the under. Just see what happens. Last one.
4.85 for Maryland last year in conference only games.
In conference only?
So, yep, right on the number.
Okay, yeah. So I feel good.
Better than I thought.
Well, not good. They're not going to do it, but I would like to be the one that can say I predicted this whenever it happens. If it happens, not whenever. If it happens.
Have some confidence.
The last one we're going to do, wins. The number is set at 4.5. Brandon, go first before you got to drop off. We're about to lose you.
Got a radio appearance coming up. I'm at 4-4 in an 8-game season, which is under. I'm at 5-4 over a 9-game season, which is over. So take your pick. If that doesn't seem to match up with all of the unders that I took, the unders on interceptions thrown was a good under. I think Nebraska will be able to force some turnovers, hence the interception number. Remember, they're going to get lucky on the fumble front. That's good. As long as the run game's okay, I think they can get to 5.
All well and logical. Aaron, where you at?
Well, I was doing 8 games, so in 8 games I would have had to take the under because of 4-4. I was going to jokingly say I'll push, but 4-4, so they'll take the under. I would agree. If it's 9, they'll go 5-4.
Okay, Jacob.
I will also go under on 4.5 in an 8-game season.
Greg.
I am going over on the 4.5 in an 8-game season, which actually probably runs counter to how pessimistic I probably sound about the offense, and a lot of that is so wrapped up in the wide receiver play. I just think that they're going to get better as the season goes along, and I think they come out of the first 4 2-2, so I think they go 5-3 overall.
Okay, so before I answer, I would like to pose a different question to the group. What happens if Nebraska starts 0-4? What happens around here if Nebraska starts its season 0-4? And not just 0-4 with like a last-minute loss to Ohio State. They're competitive against Ohio State, a last-minute field goal against Northwestern. What happens if they get blown out against Ohio State and Penn State? Wisconsin runs over them, as has normally been the case, and they lose to Northwestern. What happens around here if that happens?
And so you're asking locally, not the national, right?
Sure.
Okay.
They already wrote that Scott Frost was on the hot seat.
Yeah,
so
that's what I mean.
there.
A lot of hot seat talks, a lot of jokes about wanting to play to get
man,
to get
that would
destroyed.
That stuff is dumb.
Like
Yeah.
that would
Let's
be so
just- let's just-
annoying. I just
Focus on here locally.
oh, you're looking at me. If they start
I
out,
thought Jacob was about to start.
Yeah,
and then
no,
he
I was
just-
trying-
I'll go
clarify.
ahead. If they start out 0-4, you're going to have a lot of loud, serious, and valid questions about the long-term trajectory of the program. And if Scott Frost can really bring this thing back, there will be a lot of talk of he's Jim Harbaugh, but worse, meaning a guy that came back to his alma mater to try and restore. And you'll realize that Harbaugh has been much better than Frost has been to this point. Like, it'll be bad. Like, I think that all the talk about, he's going to get 5-6 years no matter what kind of talk will be out the window. 0-4 with like at least 3 blowout losses will be really, really bad.
Anybody else have thoughts?
It'll be bad, but 14% less bad than it could be, because that will be people kind of allowing for it, given the strange off season and everything that had to go through here. I mean, I think nationally we'll see that more than maybe locally. But you'll see teams that had disappointing or bad seasons, and it'll be written off a little bit because of extreme circumstances. For those teams that rise up and have really good years, though, it'll be like, everything was normal. It went exactly as it should have.
We pushed through the pain.
Yeah, I think 4.5 is a good number. I've got it at under because I think they'll be 4-4, which I think is what most of us said, right? And then you said 5-3.
5-2.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that 3-4-5 range is pretty much. I guess I wouldn't be shocked if anything else, but that's kind of the range that I think is most likely. And even at 3-5, I think you could potentially find some silver linings and some positives take away. You finish with 1 or 2 wins, and it's going to get really bad around here. So
Yeah.
I think this season maybe more so than any other, though, the wins aren't going to matter as much as what it actually looks like on Saturdays.
I think that's a good point.
So anything else we would like to talk about in this section before we move on? No. Okay. I would like to close this out with shout-outs or call-outs. So this is like something cool that went on this offseason, something cool that went on during fall camp, something cool that you heard that has happened in the realm of Nebraska football that you want to highlight, or something dumb from this offseason that you're happy to be moving on from. Mine is really simple. I'll start just to kind of set the lay of the land. I think it's really cool that Dedrick Mills has been so comfortable highlighting mental health stuff that he's been going through. I think it's helpful to people that are going through the same. I think it's incredibly mature of him. I think it's incredibly awesome of him to be willing and vulnerable and put that story out there. And not only put that story out there, but then bring it up on his own accord when he's talking to the media. I thought that was really cool. There's been a lot of crap that has happened this offseason. There's been a lot of disappointment this offseason. Just in the last couple months, there's just been a lot of stuff. I thought it was really cool that he's being open and honest about stuff that he's gone through, because he's not the only one on the Nebraska football team that has felt that way or will feel that way. Anybody else would like to shout out something? Go for it, Aaron.
I would say, like, with that in a similar vein, I think that this off season, and this has been because of the pandemic and people spending more time at home, and in light of the death of George Floyd, and just a bigger focus being put on the Black Lives Matter movement, I've seen more athletes feeling empowered to speak up and to use their voices, and they're using their voices on things like Dedrick Mills talking about his mental health, or a number of athletes who have posted on their own social channels about, their feelings on social justice issues. We've seen more players speak up about name, image, likeness, which these are all varying different, like all over the spectrum of things that matter in their lives and are important to them. But I think I've really enjoyed seeing the power being brought to the athletes' voices. And I imagine that it's only going to get more significant, and they're going to feel more empowered to keep sharing their voices and what matters. So that's something for me that has been really cool this off season, is just to see a number of young athletes finding their voices. So it's like I said, I'm not doing that justice in how I'm speaking about it, but it has been really, really neat to see.
Either of you guys have one?
I do.
Or want to piggyback off of what Aaron said?
I have something, and I want to piggyback off of what Aaron said. I think that one that she didn't call out specifically, and it's not to call her out, is this the Cam Taylor-Britt saying, imploring people to go and vote, I thought was important. I think that we also had talk about that, which is something I don't remember seeing from college athletes either. And
for the record, I was going to say that I feel like he got a little bit put on the hot spot in that one, but I agree with you. I think he feels very strongly about it based on what he has posted. So you're right. That is a fair call out. He should be included in that.
Yeah, but not in a call out that I was actually calling you out. Sorry. So, but the one I wanted to actually, it's fine. The
you
one
can call out the fact that he was the only person asked about that topic.
We could spend a significant amount of time doing that. I will not. But the one that I actually wanted to call out was Ronald Tompkins. I think that even if we know right now, as Held named him running back 2, that he's going to get on the field against Ohio State. It would be stunning if he doesn't. It will be a great moment when he gets out there to get on the field and takes his first snap. It's a tremendous story for him to get to this point after tearing his left ACL his junior year of high school, coming back from that, tearing his right ACL on ESPN in a national game against another big-time high school program at the beginning of his senior year, to then having the Nebraska coaching staff calling him right after that game to tell him that his scholarship was good and that he didn't have anything to worry about, and that kind of solidifying the relationship with Nebraska to the point to where when Ohio State and Alabama came in on him later in the cycle, he said thanks but no thanks. And then for him to then have a setback when he got to Nebraska because something wasn't done right in the cleanup of his knee, to then battle back from all of that to now being vaulted up to running back 2 in a year in which they brought in a couple of running backs and had another one in his class, in addition to Dedrick Mills, who's also in that class, is a really tremendous story. And it speaks a lot to his character and kind of what he's all about to even get to this point. So I thought that was one of the feel-good stories of kind of this entire thing that has happened with all of the craziness of 2020.
And it wasn't like the 2 freshman running backs that they brought in were like long-term project guys or raw guys that they needed to do a bunch of stuff with before they could get on the field. Like Marvin Scott was like ready-made to play Big Ten football right away.
Right.
It's not. Yeah, that's a great story.
Yeah,
for Ronald.
And Ronald Tompkins is the first thing I wrote down when I was thinking about this question, but I had a feeling Greg would probably go that direction. So I also wrote down kind of the rise of Luke Reimer. And he's got a really remarkable story. If you think back, that Mike Sauter did a great job of, for the Omaha World Herald, kind of breaking down how he got here to Lincoln. Just search Luke Reimer pickup in Google, and you'll get that link for that story. I encourage you to read it. But this is a guy that's 17 years old, got in a pickup truck and drove from Ashland, Kansas, up to Lincoln to move in with his sister. Just to kind of give himself a chance at better life and everything there. And so to go from that to having that decision pay off to where first he got the scholarship offer to South Dakota State and was committed there. And then Nebraska came in with the walk-on opportunity. And he decided to take advantage of that, decommitted from South Dakota State. And now he was here on campus, one of just, 3-4 freshmen that played enough to burn their red shirt. And now in year 2, not only has he earned his way onto scholarship, he's the third name that the coaches have mentioned at that inside linebacker spot, ahead of guys like Nick Henrich and Ateva Malgo-Clements that they brought in this offseason, and Garrett Snodgrass and some of these guys. They've got some guys. They've got some good players at that inside linebacker spot. And it sounds like he's going to be that first guy off the bench at that spot behind the 2 seniors. So it's just been a really remarkable story for Luke Reimer. And He's a very good player. He's really athletic. He's got a chance to have a bright future here in Nebraska, and he's I expected him to be a scholarship player eventually and get in the mix. I didn't think it would happen this quickly in year 2.
Neither did Barrett Rude.
Right. It is. You just don't really see that all that often where it happens that quickly for someone to be placed on scholarship, especially when it's not like they didn't have other guys at the position that are also on scholarship.
I appreciate that nobody went the negative route. Everybody went the positive route.
Well, Greg did call out Aaron, so we got one call out.
Man.
Don't put him on the blast.
Put that out
I will
All
call
how
out.
About this? The one thing I will be glad is done is I will be glad to stop talking about who did and did not save this Big Ten season.
Oh, that's
Like
a good one.
once it gets
that's a great
rolling,
one.
let's just be done with it. Although I have a feeling it will continue. It's just I'm ready to just move on. I'm ready to just be on to the next.
Same with the Nebraska-Ohio State buddy thing. Let's just get past that this week.
What time is kickoff? That's going to be
Yes,
out at
exactly.
11:02.
Yeah.
So.
That honeymoon phase ends
Yeah.
at 11 a.m.
Real-
Central on Saturday. That honeymoon is done.
Yeah, real fast.
I will be excited to not have to talk about the schedule anymore. We're here.
Oh, we're going to keep
We've
talking
reached
about
the
it,
season.
especially if they struggle.
No.
No, if it goes
If they
the
get off
other
to an
way,
0-4 start, we're going to be
stop.
talking about how tough this schedule was. And
no, if they start out 3-1, it's going to be talked about even more. They went through the fire. They figured it out. Frost has brought them back. The resurgence like that. It's going to be worse.
It's not going anywhere.
I hate it. I hate it.
Either way, it's going to be talked about.
You're in a tough conference. You wanted to be in a tough conference. You don't get to complain about the schedule. I hate it, regardless of who gets stacked in front of you. I hate it. Just play who's on the schedule. Anything else? Anything else that we didn't hit on that you guys would like to talk about as it relates to season predictions, season preview stuff, Ohio State week preview stuff? I think we pretty well covered everything. We covered everything that I wanted to get to.
all right, let's go through the 3 deep at every spot on offense, defense, and special teams. Go.
Aaron, plug your podcast.
I'll plug my podcast and I'll plug Brandon's.
Yeah, you
at
get to
the
plug
same time
Brandon's
since he had
new
to jump up.
podcast.
So I'll start with Brandon's. It's the newest podcast to our lineup. It is the I-80 Preview Podcast. It's just about an hour, so the drive it would take you to get from Omaha to Lincoln. Oh, look at that. Amazing. But no, seriously, if you're somebody who wants all the game day previews, the math, the analysis, all of it, Brandon Vogel has you covered. That is available now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And a bonus, Rusty Dawkins with Husker Weather has a little weather segment in there, and he's also doing stuff for Hail Varsity this season. It's a great podcast. I really recommend it. And then Sasha, who is producing this episode, she just gets to spend all the time with us. Her and I host the Mind Your Own podcast, which sticks to sports except when we don't feel like sticking to sports. And this most recent episode is about showing yourself some grace, especially over the last several months when everything is more chaotic than ever. So again, I-80 Preview Podcast, that is brand new, and then the Mind Your Own podcast. Listen to them.
When does Brandon's come out?
Yes, good question. Brandon's is out every Thursday morning, so you'll have plenty of time leading up to game day to get your information.
And yours, Aaron, comes out on
Tuesdays.
And Greg's comes out on
Tuesday.
Wait, no, mine comes out on Wednesday. Greg's is on Tuesday. I don't know anymore.
We have so many.
Oh, man.
Also, what is time?
I w-
Yeah, it
flat-
does say.
it's
I was
just
getting
flat.
that we have one every day of the week and then 2 on Fridays. Greg, we're going to go to you, and then we're going to go to Jacob.
The Straight Up Breakdown podcast with myself and former Husker Jay Foreman airs on Tuesdays. Sasha also produces that one. We're going to keep shouting her out because, and this is important, we have a goal that we've never told Sasha, that if we make Sasha laugh in here, then we've had a good, successful podcast. We've done that every time we notice. And so it's a lot of fun. We have a good time kind of talking about everything. This week we talked it was a breakdown of the Nebraska football season and a preview of what's to come, and we also have a lot of fun putting people on blast. Shout out to Dan Mullen this week. You do want to hear that.
Oh, my gosh. So dumb. So dumb. Jacob.
Yes, Derek. You can listen to the Nebraska Preps postgame show covering the week in high school football with former Husker Damon Benning and myself every Friday. We go live around 10 o'clock. You can watch us stream on Facebook and wherever else we have that. And then you can also listen to it in audio form as a podcast later on. So we're getting into the playoffs now, and things are starting to heat up here. Class A and Class B playoffs in particular should be really fun. So looking forward to continuing to follow all the action, and also may or may not have something else in the works for later on, maybe next month or so. We'll get back to you on that.
Look at that.
So
hey, Derek, before you promote your podcast, the most important, I want to set you up for this. I want to tell people a little secret. If you want to be the first to listen to the Varsity Club podcast before we really start promoting it, you should subscribe. And I'll tell you why. All of these shows go to subscribers. It'll be with you first thing in the morning when you wake up. Don't wait for us to tweet about it. Just go subscribe right now, because you're going to want to listen to this. Tell us about the best podcast ever, Derek.
I mean, people are already listening to our podcast. I don't really have to plug it on here. They're already listening to it.
Plug your podcast.
This is the OG podcast, as Greg says.
That's right.
That's about it. Everybody else has cool, fancy guests, and I just have to kind of make it up as I go.
Well, wait a second.
wait a
Did you
minute.
not have
We're not
cool,
cool
fancy?
people.
Yeah, seriously.
No. I have Sasha and I have Pat on occasion.
They're cool
None
and
of them are
fancy.
cool and
We're not cool
fancy.
and fancy.
And then you yahoos. I just would like you guys to know that I'm not going to do this. I'm done with this moving forward. We have too many podcasts now. I'm not going to plug every single one of them at the end of my. It's going to be an extra 10 minutes at the end of all my podcast episodes.
I plug all of yours
we got
at
through,
the end of mine.
Okay, well, you don't have to do that anymore.
Oh, cool.
Cool.
Hey, we're just going to have to start working our own plugs into our answers to the questions he asked us.
I think
There you go.
I think what we say moving forward, because now, like, what I was getting at is we've got one every single day. So, except for Mondays. Greg's on.
Don't we have one on Monday?
You have Monday. Jay
Oh,
Moore.
Jay Moore.
Jay Moore on
Jay Moore. Dad Yahoo. Yeah, Jay Moore. So we got one every single day. So I'm done plugging them. So Jay Moore's on Monday. You can listen to Greg on Tuesday. You can listen to Aaron and Sasha on Wednesday. You can listen to Brandon and Rusty Dawkins Rusty on Thursday. You can listen to Jacob and Damon Benning, and then myself on Friday. From now on, I'm just going to say, listen to the Hail Varsity Podcast Network.
Hail Varsity Network.
All the offerings.
Yep.
We got everything.
Yep, and you can find them all right now at hailvarsity.com. If you just go up to the fancy tab at the top that says more, there's a network tab, and you can just listen to all the shows right there. But you should just subscribe while you're at it.
Yep. Subscribe. Leave a 5-star review. And, podcasts, video stuff on YouTube, stories on hailvarsity.com. It's football season, so we've got content basically around the clock now. So just bookmark Hail Varsity, as Jacob likes to say. Keep reading, keep listening. We appreciate you guys, and let's have a kick-ass football season. Cool. Thanks, everyone.
Hell yeah.